Welcome to the July 22nd Valley View School Board meeting. I would ask everyone rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Vice President Zach, Board Mission Affirmation Statement.
Our mission is to empower all learners to be college and career ready and to develop, grow, and achieve as productive citizens.
Dr. Mitchum, the agenda, please. Motion?
Second.
Motion seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Ayes have it. Moving down the agenda, Treasurer's Report.
Treasurer's Action Report 5.1 is the monthly report, including your statement of revenue, expenditures, and equity for the month of June, the balance sheets for all funds, summary of revenue and expenditures and encumbrances for the fiscal year ending June 30th, as well as the interim obligation payments for the month of June totaling $5,598,212.28. Recommendation is approval.
So moved.
Motion and seconded. Is there any discussion or questions? Hearing none, seeing none. Roll call vote, please.
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Member Gilbo?
Yes.
Member Perro?
Yes.
Secretary Sikora?
Yes.
Vice President Zach?
Yes.
President Quigley?
Yes.
We've got two schedule of bills for your consideration this evening, beginning with Action Report 5.2 is the schedule of bills for the month of June, closing our fiscal year. 7 funds representing $3,846,327.96.
Motion?
Second.
Motion and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. Roll call vote, please.
Member Perro?
Yes.
Member Gilbo?
Yes.
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Secretary Sikora?
Yes.
Vice President Zach?
Yes.
President Quigley?
Yes. Schedule 5.3, Jack?
Yes.
Go ahead.
5.3 is the schedule of bills for the beginning new fiscal year, July 2019. 5 funds representing $1,515,307.06.
Motion?
Second.
Motion and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Member Gilbo?
Yes.
Member Perro?
Yes.
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Secretary Sikora?
Yes.
Vice President Zach?
Yes.
President Quigley?
Yes.
We've got 5.4, summary of investments, property taxes received, 5.5, state funding update, as well as the school's trust account activity, all there for your information, and if you have any questions.
Any questions? Just one. We're at our high water mark now, right? Is that pretty much the way it works?
Pretty much.
I mean, the June tax warrants peaked out.
Right,
So
June
everything from now on.
June through September is a good time for us financially, right, and then we'll just draw it down continually through May.
Right. As Gary can tell you, and unfortunately, we are limited by what we can invest in. So just because the stock market might be going gangbusters for your personal 401k or IRA, or whatever you might have, we are limited to the funds that we can invest in because you have to be good stewards of the people's money. So instead of earning what maybe 10, 12, 14%, we're probably earning 3, 4.
Not quite that high. 2.5 is probably a good rate at this time for us.
So it is what it is. Thank you, Gary. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Consent agenda, Dr. Mitchum.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to ask that the board approve consent agenda items 6.1 through 6.9. 6.1 board meeting minutes for 6/10/19, 6.2 executive session meeting minutes for 6/10/19, 6.3 board meeting minutes for 7/1/19, 6.4 executive session meeting minutes for 7/1/19, 6.5 gifts to Bolingbrook High School, 6.6 before and after school program intergovernmental agreement with Bolingbrook Park District and John R. Tibbet Elementary School, 6.7 student activity contract approval request Humphrey Middle School with Yearbook Life, 6.8 student activity contract approval request B.J. Ward Elementary School with Follett Book Fair, and 6.9 student activity contract approval request B.J. Ward Elementary School with Scholastic Book Fairs.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Member Perro?
Yes.
Member Gilbo?
Yes.
Secretary Sikora?
Yes.
Vice President Zach?
Yes.
President Quigley?
Yes. Board liaison reports. Any and all from my right?
I have something. It's just more like a question maybe to John Driscoll. I saw some recent media reports about the city of Chicago having a revolving door policy. So I did a little research and I found out that means employees that work for us and they are doing work with a contractor on a project, when they retire, they can't go and work for that contractor. Do we have anything in place like that, John?
I don't believe we do.
If we
What,
don't,
what you're really asking is, they could go work for that contractor, but they could not work for that contractor and us, or are you just saying in general with that contractor?
no, what I'm asking is that when they're done, if they retire, if they go and work for that contractor, so we have all these here capital projects going on, that somebody
One of our employees wouldn't
Employees
just go work with one
can't
of
go
those.
work for them after they retire.
Can you look into that and see what the process is for?
Will do. Yep.
All right, thank you. Good? Yeah, get back to us, whatever, couple meetings. Anybody else from the left? Hearing none, seeing none. Audience participation. Anybody in the audience who wishes to address the board this evening? Please step forward and state your name and where you are from.
My name is Teresa Carrillo, and I am from Bolingbrook, Illinois. I have a matter that I think the school board, Mr. President and board, needs to just be aware of. While I do not expect answers tonight, I have a number of questions and then some suggestions that I hope will be listened to and then acted upon appropriately. I come as both a parent and a public educator, having taught high school for 6 years, then scored standardized test scoring for Measurement Incorporated out of Raleigh, Durham, and then now I work in higher ed. I have a handout that I don't think I made enough for everybody. Do you mind if I give you a handout? This came to my house, and this is my oldest one's fee schedule. And I think it might just be good if people looked at it. If I could draw your attention to the line item that says, the bottom line item before the total that says course materials and AP exams. And then if you will look at the student account summary. This was a little bit of sticker shock when this came to my house. And my husband and I have 4 children in the Valley View School District. We have 2 high schoolers, 1 middle schooler, and 1 in elementary school. So the way that this originally was, our school fees to enroll our children in a public school would have been $1,226 this year. So I called the school. I was told that that's probably incorrect and I could go on Infinite Campus, and I questioned the course material and AP exams, because AP exams have never been a part of the registration process. And I said, my daughter is taking 3 AP exams. And they said, no, she's taking 4. And I said, what? And she said, most parents don't know this, but when you sign up for Spanish 4, you are automatically put into the AP exam and you are automatically charged. So that was an issue. I did go on to Infinite Campus after the link was fixed. On Infinite Campus, you do some clicking, but once you push print, it did say that the AP exam fees are not really due until March 1st. Okay, so I do want to say that part. So when I called, I said, but the paper that comes to our house says the following fee information reflects the total amount due at time of registration. We have a number of friends whose children are also AP, and they are thinking that they're paying all of this next Monday or next week when they register for school. My suggestion was that maybe a robocall should be placed, but none to date has. So I have some questions and then some suggestions, and I think I have a time limit, so I'll try to talk fast. And I have copies of these questions also. Why were parents sent fees in the registration letter if they aren't really due until March 1st? Is Valley View planning to make the fees due at registration? Are we following the proposed timeline for AP coordinators listed on AP Central at collegeboard.com? Why are students who sign up for Spanish 4 automatically signed up? Why weren't parents told about the rebate that the school gets from testing fees? Why weren't parents told that College Board does not allow the rebate to go back to the parents? If the rebate is used for scholarships for needy students, and I'm told that some of the money is used for that, why haven't we been told how many students have benefited? Why hasn't an itemized list been sent to we, the paying parents, stakeholders? I did attempt to find this on the budget. There was no line item for AP. I did look at remedial and supplemental, but that's as far as it was drilled down. Does some of the money go for the BHS AP boot camp, or was that also paid by parents? In May of 2018, at the NHS induction, Dr. Pascavage reported that the number of AP exams had increased by 1,200 over the previous 3 years to a total of 1,700 exams. There is a $9 per exam rebate given by College Board. So, why was that not listed in the budget? Who checks the College Board website for accuracy? Do we have a liaison? BHS won an award, but I don't see it on the honor schools that were listed for last year or the previous year. Who checks these things? College Board is no angel maid. Who lobbies against College Board? Remember that they are no angel maid. They want to be the premier testing clearinghouse for data. If the fee money is paid by parents, and it is, why shouldn't the rebate come back to parents? In other words, why is College Board driving the vehicle? Why hasn't there been any information on the numbers of students who score a 5, a 3, a 4, 3, 2, 1, or 0? This should be reported out each year in August, since scores are returned by then. Why are parents being misled that the student will get college credit when that may or may not be true? Example, if you are going to be a psychology major at the University of Illinois, they may make you take all of your major psychology on their campus. They may give you elective credit for a 3. This is also true at Illinois State for music theory. If you get a 3 on music theory, which is considered passing, they will give you elective credit, but you must take music theory because they feel like the skills of a young person who scores a 3 are not adequate to make it through music theory at their campus. So unless you get a 4 or 5 on music theory, you are getting some elective credit, but you are still taking your major coursework there. I did bring this up at the AP boot camp a year ago. I do not know who I was speaking with. She was not wearing a name tag, I don't believe. And I said, you know, some of this credit is not always transferred. And she said, well, right, if your child is going to Harvard. And I felt a little belittled. And then she said, but you're right, you know, you can check on College Board or you should check with your school. But my issue is we were 9th grade parents. 9th graders don't usually know what they're majoring in yet. It has been said that BHS would like to have 50% of seniors taking an AP class. Isn't this all placement instead of advanced placement? This becomes an ethical problem of increasing numbers and doing it on the backs of students who are not really AP material. This is why we must know how many students are getting 3s, 2s, 1s, and 0s? Why are guidance counselors saying that colleges will like the GPA of AP students when in reality, colleges unweight the GPA? Your weighted GPA is really at the high school level. Most schools in-state and out-of-state are unweighting that. And sometimes that's a very big shock to we parents when we're meeting with guidance counselors or admissions counselors that they're like, you know what, we unweight it. We put everybody on the same scale. So I have some suggestions because I feel like this is really a communication issue. I know the program, the AP program for Valley View is relatively newer as far as ramping it up, scaling it up, if you will, over the last 3 years. So I do have some suggestions. I think to create a website link just for AP would be helpful. This link should have all of the current numbers regarding fees, student success, and the titles of the AP course listed for both BHS and RHS. It should state how many students took each test. Currently at BHS, there are 22 AP exams being offered or AP courses being offered for the 2019-2020 school year. And I feel like that part of the site should say what the scoring is for 543-210. A paper letter should be sent home to every AP parent or guardian in April stating exactly which test the student is taking. This is currently done on a general level. A letter comes, it states to be ready for the exam, it states that it'll be long, to go to the gym or the field house or whatever, but it is not student specific. 3, if fees are going to be required at registration, this needs to be voted on by parents at the Valley View District. If fees are collected as they are now, who holds the money in escrow? So next week, if parents are really gonna pay their AP fees, but the fee is not really due until March 1st, where is the escrow, who holds that, etc. 4, AP coordinators should regularly check College Board's website for mistakes on the College Board website and reporting. Mentoring program. Parents and guardians of 9th graders should be mentored by parents of previous AP students who have already graduated so that clear information can be shared for what is accepted and not accepted. We have a valedictorian from BHS a few years ago who was majoring in chemical engineering, and she took chemistry, AP chemistry. But she was, again, discouraged from using that as her major credit because they want to see her skills. Can you really do it? And her mom said to me that AP course, such a waste. Numerous parents warned me about the weighted versus unweighted GPA conundrum. It is not fair to tell 9th grade parents and guardians that this is, quote, saving them money, unquote, and then in 4 years they find out that the school of choice is not accepting that credit. So I think a mentoring program at both high schools would help that situation. That is all I have. I do think that these problems and these questions with AP can be rectified. I just think it needs to be a little more transparent for parents of the Valley View School District. And I do have a copy of all those questions I asked, and I have copies of my suggestions as well.
Thank you. Can you give those to Shelley at the end? And she'll make those available, and we will try to find some answers to some of this. I don't know the answer to probably half of those questions for sure. I mean, the fees being held in escrow, North, the idea, how many kids take and pass a class, off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you. I mean, we have literally thousands of kids taking these tests, and you know, what session is getting 1s through 5s, and we wouldn't have that. I mean,
No,
that information is available, but we don't have it at our fingertips.
all of her questions are legitimate, and responses will be forthcoming from us.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your thoughtful feedback and suggestions. We will definitely have responses, and we can contact you directly, and then we will also provide that information to the board. And I can tell you that many of the things that you suggested are things that we are discussing and planning and how to continue to improve the program and to continue to improve the support, because it's not just about getting more kids in AP courses. That's not the goal. And we want it to be a positive experience for students and parents. So we appreciate your suggestions. Our Director of College and Career Readiness, if she can raise her hand, Dorletta Payton is in the back, and you might want to catch her if you stick around and are able to talk to her at the end, but we will follow up with you personally as well as provide information to the board, because we most certainly have answers to all of these questions.
Okay.
And then if there's any that we do not, we will get answers for those.
Okay,
Thank you.
So I have a question, though, to
Yes.
follow up with her. What are they going to do? Are you going to come to a conclusion about what to do about these fees before next week?
So in regards to the fees, you want to come on up real quick? There
No,
have
I
been
know
some
on
changes
Infinite-
with the,
On Infinite Campus, it says the AP fees are not really due until March 1st. And as far as why she was signed up, and the person that I talked to at the school did say many students and language students and language parents don't realize when you sign up for Spanish 4, you are automatically taking the AP test. Now, when I did print out Kendra's printout from Infinite Campus, it doesn't call it AP. I'm not sure why. It calls everything else AP, like AP Government, AP, I forget what all her AP is that she's, AP Language, et cetera. It's called something else. So I was questioning that too. I'm like, because I know Plainfield, my friend's son who's taking Spanish at Plainfield, I said, Ricardo, are you taking Spanish 4 or are you taking Spanish 4 AP? And he said, I'm taking AP. But Kendra's here in Bolingbrook is just called Spanish 4. It's not called Spanish 4 AP. So I was much relieved to find out that 376, most of that, but you can see the sticker shock that occurred. And I've had many of these AP questions in my mind over the last year, but honestly, when I opened that letter, I was like, okay, I have to have some answers here because this is huge. This is huge.
I have a question also. If you take an AP class, does not mean you have to take the AP exam, correct?
Correct. They
That
don't
is
like
correct.
it if you do that, but that is
Right,
correct.
Correct, but you can, and so this is assuming that every child in every AP class is going to take that exam also.
there's been some recent communications from the College Board regarding fee, the collection, when that's due, and also taking of the exam. Dorletta, do you want to offer a few comments on that?
Good evening. Didn't know I was going to talk about AP tonight, but I'm very happy to. This year, the last 2 years, the College Board, excuse my voice, has been piloting new procedures for AP and how they handle the exam registration. And so this school year, 1920, they are going live nationwide. Probably the biggest change is the fee collection. And so we will be submitting the fees to College Board in November for our AP courses. If a course is a semester-only second semester course, then that date changes to March. I don't know what's in Infinite Campus right now regarding the AP fees, but that is the case for 1920. We highly encourage all students to take the AP exam. One of the things that College Board found during this pilot of the AP fees is they found that the results were better for when students had the earlier registration, and of course more students were receiving college credit. So these are not changes that Valley View started. It came from the College Board. The Spanish 4 versus the AP Spanish question, yes. When you have a course and AP is in the title, there are very specific requirements that the College Board has of, what's going to be in the course, et cetera. What I do know about Spanish 4 and AP for Valley View is that we have a high number of students that are getting a 3 or higher on the AP exam from those that take our Spanish 4 course. So that is the Spanish 4 AP credit for Spanish is really a good news story for many of our Valley View students. There was what other question can I answer right now?
I have a question.
Yes.
So if College Board is requiring you to pay, or the student to pay for their test by November 1st, they've got until April or May, and April, beginning of May, whenever the test is, and what if they decide they don't want to take the test? Do they get a refund?
So there is a $40 penalty for changes. This is College Board, not us. A $40 change fee for AP exams. So there is a very high incentive not to have changes for people that decide later on that they want to take the AP exam. If so, then there's an additional $40 fee.
So if somebody doesn't decide until February 1st that they want to take it, they have to pay $40 more?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a public meeting.
This is why I'm asking, who is lobbying College Board? Like I said, College Board is no angel maid. And if you look at some of what their executives make, yes, they are a nonprofit, but at the top, they are profiting. And so schools need to band together, and school districts need to say, hey, and I guess one of my other questions is, I saw that they had changed the fee schedule. So Infinite Campus still says March 1st, but how will we pay the bill?
Well, just like with all fee collection, I mean, the district pays the bill, we collect student fees, just like with a normal course.
Okay.
Those student fees for those courses do offset, but we as a district are still funding materials and all of that. The money we collect is offset, and then we continue to collect on accounts that are not paid in full. So it would be similar to that.
Okay.
I have a question. Can they choose at the beginning when they sign up for the class not to pay this fee? And then I guess they would have to pay the $40 if they do decide the $40 extra later. If they don't
Yes.
pay it by November.
Yes, there is an opt-out. I don't know the exact procedures, but yes, they can. I think for any course, you can opt out of the exam.
Opt in or out?
Out.
And in, yeah.
If I understood her question, with Spanish 4,
Oh, was it specific to Spanish 4? Well,
specific
like Spanish 4,
you're
all
required
of,
to, you're charged a fee for the AP exam up front.
because they're having all of these Spanish 4 students take the AP exam unless there is an opt-out.
So Spanish 4 students can opt out and not pay the fee and remain in the course, not be dropped.
Correct.
I have a question.
Yes.
Or two. Going to Spanish 4, if the child doesn't pay the fee, he doesn't get that credit, or she doesn't get that credit for college, correct?
No, Spanish 4 is a high school course. They take it just like they take any other high school course.
Okay, but for the AP class,
Spanish 4 is a regular non-AP course.
You don't have to take an AP course to take an AP test.
Yes.
so if you take the AP test should give you college credit.
So
Correct.
that is one of the things that I did that I forgot that I wanted to address. In the state of Illinois, any state school is required to give college credit for an AP score of 3 or higher. Now, how that credit is applied, as she referenced, is up to the college, the university. So some might give elective credit, some might give credit in the major. So what might happen is you have a student that has a number of credits, but they go towards electives, not towards what their major is. But it's still college credit for a course that's an elective that they don't have to take, that for whatever fee was paid for that AP exam, they've now received credit for that college course.
But Vic, if they don't take the test, they don't get college credit.
Correct.
They don't take the test and get the required score, they will not get the college credit. Correct.
And it should also be noted that you talked about public school colleges. Private universities require typically a 4 or a 5 at the, I mean, they're all at least a 4 and some of them, minimum of a 5 before credit.
Correct. If they are not an Illinois public university, then it is up to them on if they accept the credit, the score required for them to accept the credit.
And that's based on per school, every place.
For non-public, yes. And so if the student does not take the exam, there is no possibility. As parents, I still have a child that is in college, and so the ability to have your child receive college credit for the work that they've done in high school can reap very high financial benefits. So that's, besides having the coursework that is at a college level, it's also the potential financial benefit of receiving credit for a college course.
And some schools will allow you to test out at their school. You may have to pay a fee, but it's not nearly as much as the per hour.
And that's up to
per
college or
classroom hour.
university.
I do know
Totally
that.
separate from
Yeah.
AP,
Yep.
And then,
But it's the AP class that may have got you to that point.
where you're able to do
We're
well
able
on
to
that.
pass that, but, yeah,
Yes.
so, and that's
Right.
been going on for decades.
right. And at private universities, you typically, what I've experienced is you pay a flat fee for your tuition, regardless if you take 10 hours or 20 hours or 30 hours.
Correct.
So you're really not saving money at a private university, where at a public university, you pay per hour, correct?
But if a student goes in with a semester of credit or a year of credit, they're not paying that. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, yes. So yes, they still are even in that scenario, unless it's just one class, and so they won't have any reduction in the tuition, but yes.
Yeah, for an example, my son went to a private college, university, but he graduated in 3 years, so it did save us a lot of money.
Exactly.
So we have a lot of stuff to work on.
Yeah, we definitely will address her valid
Ms.
questions.
Krillo, thank you for bringing this forward.
One other point that the community member stakeholder brought up that I think the board might want to consider for future reference is the weighted versus unweighted GPA. Because many public school districts are moving away from it for that particular reason. As you know, my daughter just enrolled in school and her GPA was significantly lower after you remove the weighting versus the weighted grade. And so it speaks to a lot of what are now becoming antiquated systems that school districts continue to engage in around valedictorian, salutatorian, top 10, all of those things that really are a product of politics in local school systems, as opposed to there being having any valid worth at the college level. They really are just moving away from that completely.
Dr. Mitchum, can I kind of add on to that comment? Even when you're not, let's just say for college admissions purposes, when GPA is not taken into account, weighted versus not weighted, one of the very first things that a college admissions officer is going to look at is the strength of the courses that they took. Did they take the courses that were the most challenging for them at that education, at that high school? So that is absolutely a factor in college admission. So,
but for clarification purposes, I guess, question. The weighting of courses is not necessarily an indication of the rigor of the course when they're examining the strength of a particular course.
Right. My point is, even when there's not weighting, so everything's on an even playing field. So let's just say that you have two students that are going for college admission, both have a 3.5 GPA because nothing has been weighted, that the college admissions officer is then going to look at what courses student A took versus what courses student B took. And if student A took easier courses that were not as challenging, et cetera, then student B did, student B will get the nod versus student A.
So they're able to delineate between, an honors course versus a non-honors course despite the GPA.
Absolutely,
and they will
yes.
examine the transcript specific to that point.
Absolutely, yes.
Which is, again, something I think the board needs to consider in the future surrounding weighted versus non-weighted. Really, what it just does is sets kids up to compete with each other that can at times drive down kids' willingness to engage in more rigorous coursework.
But I think also we need to let those students know, if that's what we do, that what Les said is, they're going to look at both students and compare what they take. Because I'll tell you what, if I were a student, I'd take underwater basket weaving and get my A rather than take advanced algebra or advanced trig and get my A.
Because you don't know the impact.
Exactly. So that students need to know that it is dependent upon what they take, not necessarily.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. Otherwise, I'm with them. I take the easy course.
So as you can tell, there's a great deal of complexities in this conversation, and I think the points are well taken that Mrs. Carrillo brought up, and it's regarding communication, clarity, mentorship, and support, not only for our students, but for our parents. And that's something that we're definitely committed to improving on and working together to improve. So as I mentioned, we'll take your suggestions. We'll bring them back. We do have teams at both high schools that continue to plan to improve their efforts for not only recruitment, but support and development and communication. And Dorletta is our liaison for that. The financial consideration is a huge one. We wrestle with this one all the time. We do seek grant funding often as possible to help support students in that, especially students who are taking a great deal of courses. Sticker shock is quite the word. I definitely recognize that. We don't want to deny our students any opportunities, so we'll continue to keep that as a matter of important consideration as well, to give our students opportunities that all students in other neighboring districts have, and nationally. So thank you for your thoughtful comments, inputs, and suggestions. We really appreciate that, and if you're willing to continue the dialogue, I think you'd be a great person to reach out to give us feedback to really truly make some of these changes come to life. So I appreciate your time, and Dorletta, thank you for all the input.
Can we still do something for this year?
For the fee collection?
Can we somehow let the parents know that it's
Yes.
not us, that it's, if they
We
don't
can.
pay, that they're going to pay extra down the line? I mean, I think I wouldn't have known that, and I'm on the board.
Yeah, and a lot of it is changes that are new to us as well. So we are working through those, but to your point, we most certainly can. And so we can work with the high schools to bring clarity to that, especially for those who are collecting the fees or perhaps taking the calls from parents questioning the fees, to make sure that we're all on the same page with that. In terms of handling the fees, in terms of the ideas that we have as a district or as a board on how we can help parents or students who are taking those courses, I mean, that's also a conversation that I'm willing to engage in, because we certainly would be open to whatever possibilities were present. But in the collective total, it is a great sum, especially for the number of exams that our students are taking, and not just taking, but earning a 3 or better. That is giving that opportunity for the potential for credit, but also the exposure and challenge and rigor that they're going to be met with when they leave us. So there's benefits, financial and academic, and we can work together to continue to support our kids through this. In many families, it's a first-time experience for them, and so it's even trickier to navigate, just as the whole post-secondary experience is as well.
So it sounds to me like we need to get something on the district website, the two high school websites, and then potentially a robocall or something out this week.
We can do that. We definitely can do that. And then there would just be the question of the timeline with the fee collection dependent on when the course is and when they're taking it, because we as a district still have to submit for the number of tests and pay that bill to get the tests. And, you know, to your point, we don't like the rules. We play by the rules in terms of, you know, setting the fee structure and all of that. Advocacy and all of that is a whole nother topic of conversation at the state level. But we are kind of just playing along as best as we can and then working inside of those parameters that are set for us. But that's something that we do discuss at the state level when we do convene. So we can definitely do, to your suggestion, what you said, and then also look at the bigger picture too, and do our best to continue to navigate it.
And just ask around to other districts surrounding, what are they doing with this?
They're doing the exact same thing because this was a new change in terms of having that fee submitted earlier, because the research showed, like Loretta said, that it is, there was a greater commitment and in turn a greater outcome for students because they have that mindset going in that I am taking the test. I'm not just here to see if I like it. They were in it. And when they made that commitment and paid the fee up front, the outcome was greater. So they had the great idea that they would make that change a universal change. And so, I mean, we'll see what impact that has. Right now, we didn't have a say in if that change was coming or not. But the piece that we can do better in is communicating that change to parents, and then also communicating any other changes that happen with fee collection and the like.
Can we address also if the refund is on the table or off the table for somebody that pays for it and then they don't take it later?
Right, and there is that penalty deduction that she spoke of. So again, that's not Valley View's rule. That is College Board's rule. So we will submit the names and the number of tests that our students are taking in each course. And then if students don't take that, there is a refund, but it's prorated with that penalty deduction. Or are you speaking to the rebate that Mrs. Carrillo spoke to?
The refund. So parents need to be made aware of that.
Right, okay.
And then maybe we could look into that rebate as well.
My understanding is that I'm hearing that every question that she asks will be addressed. Maybe the time and the things that are necessary for parents to have right now, but my understanding that we're asking the questions and they're all good and going forth, but my understanding, I thought that this board will hold them accountable, that every question that she asks will be answered.
I agree with you, Liz,
Absolutely.
but there's some questions that need to be addressed like to tomorrow
Yeah.
because of registration next week.
Yeah, just the timeliness, I think, is why that question needs immediate attention, but most certainly we can provide answers to all of the questions, to you personally and to the board, and most importantly, connect that back with the high school teams who work most directly as the liaisons and coordinating the testing, the logistics, as well as the direct communication with parents, because that's your go-to. That was your first call to the school, and so we want everyone to be on the same page and able to support parent questions. And then also that mentorship component and communication component is really critical.
Thank you. Anybody else? We're good? All right.
Thank you.
Moving down the agenda, I forgot where we are here. Action reports. Dr. Mitchum, doesn't look like you have anything. Ms. Kinder, 10.1.
Yeah, the timing is almost too comical on this one, sir.
Yeah, you might want to explain that one.
So this is Action Report 10.1 regarding a College Board contract. And we are seeking your approval to enter into a contractual agreement with College Board, pending attorney review, to continue to provide an aligned system of assessments for students in grades 8 through 11 that corresponds with the state-mandated suite of assessments for high school students. So we were previously speaking about College Board, and that was for AP exams. This is for something different, and so this is in alignment with the Illinois State Board of Education's requirement for the SAT to be the required 11th grade state assessment. for purposes of state and federal accountability. So in connection with that requirement that came about 2 years ago after we had switched from the ACT, we had made the commitment to provide the suite of assessments during the 17-18 school year and the 18-19 school year. The board did approve those contracts to provide that suite of assessments so that our students have a way to work towards that SAT they're taking as 11th graders. So this is the same action item that you have seen in previous 2 years in terms of entering into a contract to provide the PSAT 8-9 for 8th and 9th grade students and the PSAT NMSQT for 10th and 11th grade students. The total cost of this of these assessments is $46,004.10, and there's a breakdown for the assessment administration on the page 2 of this action report. It is a cost per unit, and then we have an estimate based on our total enrollment, and then that is adjusted if we have fewer students enrolled or if we have more students enrolled. So this is a reoccurring cost that we've incurred since 2 years ago. We'd be funding this in the FY20 budget, and we are seeking your approval this evening.
Motion?
So move.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion on the PSAT/NMSQT test?
I do. I have a lot of concerns about the number of tests these children take, and 8th graders take the PSAT. We want them to take it in spring and the fall, but they also take the IAR, correct, that replaced Park?
The students, yes, in middle
In the
school do.
spring.
3 through 8 takes the IAR, the Illinois Assessment of
So those
Readiness.
8th graders are taking PSAT when they, in the fall. Then in the spring, they will take the PSAT again, plus the IAR. Is there a reason we have to give that PSAT again? Can't they just, I mean, they have to take the state test. I don't, to me, it's just, and then they have quarter tests, I mean, not quarter tests, but chapter tests and unit tests and all this testing that they take. To me, it's ridiculous. Plus, we're paying, you know, $10,000 to have these kids take that test because we give it twice.
We do continue to have conversations with this. One of the problems, though, is the transitioning from the IAR, grades 3 through 8, into a new suite of assessments, and so using that bridge to cross over. Placement is another factor, as well as the typical times that we administer that. Mr. Herder, do you have any comments about the most recent conversations about the administration for 8th or 9th grade that you wanted to add?
I thought placement was on that fall test that they take when they first get there, like in October.
It
because
is.
they are placed in their high school courses.
They're placed in
way
high school
before they
courses
take the spring one.
in the winter. So they're not taking it in the spring, they're taking it in the, oh gosh, I'm sorry, I'm getting confused by all these tests.
They take it-
October,
Right.
yes.
Right.
And then,
For the next year.
But then it's that one that's used to place them in the high school courses, because by the spring, they've already been placed. So my question is, why do they have to take it again?
they don't take it again in 8th grade.
Yeah, there is no spring
There's-
SAT suite of assessments
No.
for 8th graders. So the idea is there's a fall assessment, and then that IAR Illinois State assessment is the only
Thing they take in the
large
But it was
assessment they take in the
free
spring.
for one set of tests. It's not free for one set of tests?
It's not free.
I thought the state of Illinois paid for one of
They do. They pay for the spring assessment for 9th, 10th, and 11th graders.
So they don't pay for this one because we give it in the fall? Oh, because it's 9th, 10th, and we do it 8th? Is that what you're saying?
The 8th grade one we're not paid for.
Okay.
That's why it's on here.
So then let's go on to 9th and 10th grade. Why do we give it twice there?
And this is a conversation we've been having. Good evening. So the conversation this past year, and we've been talking to the schools about this, the principals, assistant principals, but also the teachers at the schools as well, around what is the usage of that data. And we do utilize the data from the fall administrations of those assessments to make decisions around students and around instruction, things like that. It isn't just the data that we take in the spring. The conversation has been, though, what is the ultimate value of that weighed against the amount of testing and the cost. So the most recent conversations that we've had about it was that to fully acknowledge your question, that there were concerns in that area, but that it still was an overall net positive for us to continue to get that data in the fall because it is utilized.
I have a question for you, Adam. So when I was reading through the information, it said stuff about resources that are available. That's why they want to give it in October, so that, one of my questions is who, so that people can use the data for these children. And I'm wondering, because I've talked to some teachers and they don't necessarily see the data. Do the students see they might just see like a list of data, but not specific for each child data. So they wouldn't really know how to apply it to each one of these children. And then it kind of looks like maybe there's an availability with these resources for the students to use whatever their scores are and their placement is and their weaknesses to help improve before they take the spring tests. So my question to you is, do we actually have those resources available, and do we utilize that, and can the students see that, and can the teachers see that so they can use that if that is available here?
To the best of my knowledge, when you log into the platform as a student, you can see all of those resources. Several of them are newer to the platform now than they used to be. So in gaining familiarity myself, I've noticed that there's several tools around what skills you'd want to work on, how you would work on those skills, directly giving feedback to the student after they take every assessment.
So, I didn't even realize that. So it sounds like the college prep-ready students and the ones that are working in the summer might be seeing and using some of this, but I don't necessarily know or haven't heard if it is being communicated to all of the high school teachers that would be able to use this information. So I'm asking, could we make sure that that's available?
Yeah,
and that
no, I appreciate the question. I don't want to speak incorrectly, so I don't want to give like an absolutely definitive answer, not knowing the exact detail myself, but it is definitely something we will follow up with to ensure that not only is the data being used, which is voice that I have heard, but that all the tools are accessible and that we're communicating proactively at what the tools are to both parents and students, because there's also tools for families as well to understand where their student is at in terms of their performance at various points in time. Exactly, with the goal of making improvements and involving families in their child's education as well.
Could you, at some point in time in the near future, be specific to me as to how the school uses this data and why it's important to give it twice a year with everything else these kids take for tests? I truly, it bothers me, because we talk about these kids having to take tests and how many tests they take as to why they need to take it with the cost $46,000, why they need to take it twice a year.
Absolutely. I will gain absolute clarity for myself on that so I can answer that with
you.
more specificity.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have a motion, we have a second to take the PSAT/MSQT test with the College Board. Roll call vote, please.
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Member Gilbo?
Yes.
Member Perro?
Yes.
Secretary Sikora?
No.
Vice President Zach?
Yes.
President Quigley?
Yes. Moving down the agenda, where are we at here? Let's see. Oh, I'm on the wrong page, sorry about that. Mr. Grisafi, what might you have for us this evening?
I've got no actions this evening.
Thank you. Ms. Nash, Consolidated Action Report.
We have Consolidated Action Report 12.1 this evening. Tonight we're seeking your approval on 58 items for certified personnel, 34 items for classified personnel, 7 items for classified administrative personnel, and 1 item for certified administrative personnel.
Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, hearing none. Roll call vote, please.
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Member Gilbo?
Yes.
Member Perro?
Yes.
Secretary Sikora?
Yes.
Vice President Zach?
Yes.
President Quigley?
Yes. Oops. Information report, psychology textbook adoption.
Yes, information report 13.1 is presenting information prior to seeking approval for the high school standard psychology textbook adoption. This textbook, psychology textbook resource includes the purchase of psychology 8-year print as well as the digital premium student resource package with Channel 1 text. The information report includes a summary of the background, rationale, process, and criteria for selection, as well as a recommendation for the purchase. The report was prepared by our teacher team, core teacher team, led by Stacy Soliday from RHS and Katie Spirity from BHS, and assisted by Melissa Rosa, who's our curriculum coordinator. And essentially, what our educators did was provide an update that was long overdue with the curricular resources dating back to 2006. With changes made in the published DSM-5, obviously updates were needed. As such, the national standards for high school psychology were updated. So working with those updated standards, their team of educators went ahead and went through the entire process of developing a curriculum map, working with the standards, identifying the priority standards, and working through that entire process. This is a college-oriented elective course designed to help students understand human behavior. The focus is on the scientific study of human development, learning, motivation, and personality. So what the team is recommending, and we'll be seeking your approval on at the next board meeting, is to purchase with a one-time payment structure for 8 years at a price of $26,881.96, be funded by the FY20 budget. That we adopt this print and digital resource, and they do have an implementation plan for support of using this resource with students. And their plan is to implement this upcoming school year in the 1920 school year. And you can see there is a communication timeline that would follow with approval, in which all teachers would have access to the text and resources. And then the core group of teachers would continue to meet to troubleshoot, work with their curriculum maps, work with assessments, and so on. So there's some other detail included in this. I'm happy to answer any questions that I can, or direct you to directly to the teachers or to the curriculum coordinator if you had any more specific questions that they are certainly the experts on and could answer.
I have a question, but it's not necessarily for them.
Okay.
I know I've asked this question before when we voted on getting books and materials for the classroom, which I am 100% for. I know I asked about the process. We used to be on a cycle.
Mm-hmm.
I see that they put in a lot of hard work to be able to get books, and that's great. And that's awesome. I really like that. But is that what is necessary for a teacher group to do to be able to get materials for class? Or what do we do for the other teachers that haven't done this? Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, we have a process in place, and I think it's really important that there is a process in place because it's important that we are looking to the standards first and understanding the standards and what are priorities, and then finding resources or materials that allow us to achieve those standards with our students. We do have criteria in place to go through a new adoption, and that is critical. We used to have a cycle in place, like you said, when the Common Core rolled around about, I guess, 9 years ago. That kind of went out the window temporarily because everything had to be relooked at. And now that we've leveled out, we are, as you're seeing these courses come back through that aren't necessarily of like core curriculum in the core content areas, we're starting to get back on a cycle, and that's the full intention. So especially courses that have not had attention for a while, with curriculum updates, with new materials and resources if needed, that those are going to start to cycle back through. But it is important that we have teacher teams doing this work, leading the charge. They are the experts in their standards. They are the experts in understanding how they can best accomplish that. And so we do rely on our teacher teams, or the committees that are put together to do that. And then they thoroughly vet this and make their best recommendations to what they feel they need, and our job is to support them.
I think probably I was teaching during that time period, the turnover with the Common Core.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I was in the class, I didn't even have a set of classroom books for my kids, and I was told the next year, sorry. And
Well, when
I
I
did, I
came to-
had no materials
Yeah.
whatsoever, and so I really am concerned that I don't want this to be happening right now while I'm on the board to other teachers that are in the district.
that do not have materials?
Yeah, I was told, sorry, for the next year, you're not gonna have any books. That's just what there
Okay.
is. And I really am concerned that this isn't still happening. So that's why I'm asking.
Well, I can tell you
how-
that that's not still happening. In a couple information reports, you'll see list by list, every course in the entire district, what instructional materials are available and approved for teachers to use. If we've gotten requests, like the health textbooks, for example, that came up in recent board meetings that were outdated and in need of being updated, we've honored those requests. If you're aware of any, I would ask you to tell those teachers to please contact me directly. You can see on the instructional materials information report that follows that there's clear identification of resources and materials for every course, and there's many supplements, more than ever before, that are available for teachers, and including digital resources, like Achieve 3000, for example, or others
Yeah,
at
that's what
different
they were
levels.
expecting me to do, is come up with a whole new curriculum over the summer with resources that were on the internet, and all my books were falling apart and pages everywhere on the floor. So I want to make sure that we're taking care of our classroom teachers.
That's my goal as well, and that's what we strive to do across the board, everyone on the curriculum team. We're driven by teacher voice for every recommendation we make, and we've made a lot of corrections to what was available or what was needed, so that teachers weren't just out there looking for things to fill the need. A lot of textbooks were rendered obsolete, and so there are a lot more supplementary materials relied on now in our courses, because it's not just a textbook page by page type of thing that may have been in place a decade or more ago. But again, I share your goal, and I can assure you that if there are teachers that feel that they don't have adequate materials or resources, or there's a course that is in dire need, like psychology or health that you learned about previously, that we are more than open to getting teachers together to identify what the needs are, and then meet that with whatever materials or resources that are available. But it isn't just, there's guidance out there and there's support, so it's not just go out and find whatever you need. There's a high priority on quality materials that will help teachers achieve those standards with their students.
Thank you.
Community service hours.
Yes. Information report 13.2. I'd like to invite Dorletta Payton, Director of College and Career Readiness, back to the podium to speak to you tonight regarding community service hours for Valley View students. At the request of the Board of Education, information is being brought forth regarding the incorporation of community service hours as part of the educational experience for Valley View students. Tonight, Dorletta is going to give you a brief overview of a summary of the background, research, and stakeholder input. When the request has come up multiple times, and we've kind of had a dialogue, but never in an official format. And so to that end, we had convened a subgroup, a committee to get together, made up of a Board of Education representative, educators, community representatives, and administrators, to give some input into this topic again, and to formalize the conversation to bring it back to the board for their consideration. So Dorletta is going to give us some overview of where things stand and what a recommendation may look like.
Good evening again. So as Assistant Superintendent Kinder indicated, we've been doing some work on this that included meeting with our various stakeholders to discuss this topic of community service for our students in Valley View. So I'm going to give an overview of some of the materials, some of the items that we talked about with that group, and some of the recommendations, direction that they gave us coming out of that meeting with them. The first question was, why community service? And I think probably everyone here can think of multiple reasons that community service is a good idea for everyone, but especially for young people as they are learning and developing and gaining new skills that will carry them throughout life. So not only does it help the individual, but there are also benefits to the community. And for our students, community service can provide career experiences. It can help fulfill the college and career readiness indicator for the Every Student Succeeds Act for Illinois. We talked about college admissions earlier. This is another thing that many colleges can look at. There are scholarships that are specifically for community service and rewarding students for that experience. And then last but absolutely not least is the personal satisfaction that people get, in this case it would be our students, receive from performing community service. So we looked at a little bit of research about community service, and there was actually a longitudinal study that took place looking at from adolescent to adult health, and community service was one of the things that they looked at in this study. And the study basically found that, as we know, community service is beneficial. And it showed that there were gains in the students' academic motivation, their attitudes, their knowledge, and their grades. That students that perform community service were more likely to graduate from high school, and then even on into post-secondary, it impacted not only their education, but their earnings ability. And then back to the personal satisfaction, it talked about how it impacts students on an individual basis. So the results of this study lent support to the case for youth volunteer programs providing opportunities for community service, but did suggest that when students choose community service voluntarily is really when there is the most benefit. So just looking at the college admissions piece a little bit deeper, they surveyed college admissions officers. 58% agreed community service has a positive impact on students being accepted into their college. And they identified why, for them at their educational institution, they felt community service was a factor in how the student would be successful at their school. And you see, it showed that they're more likely to be an active member of the campus community, more likely to contribute to their mission, and it also was a way for the student to show that they shared the values of the school. So they said, yes, students should engage in community service, but it should really be driven by what the students' interests and passions are. And that is where the real benefit came in. They also said they didn't like where it was just a few hours here, a few hours there, that they preferred something that was long and sustained, because that showed that the student was really working on something that was representative of what their personal interests and passions were. They also showed that students that work on community service have a deeper understanding of diversity. So where does community service fit when we're looking at the Valley View School District's strategic plan? We find that it is aligned in two of our goals. First, in goal 1, ensuring that all students are college and career ready. When we look at the Every Student Succeeds Act, as I indicated earlier, the college and career readiness indicator, one of the ways that that can be proven is by students having 25 hours or more of community service. And then way back in the 1990s, ISB gave guidance about community service as well in our high schools. So looking at that in the context of Goal 1 of our students being college and career ready, the focus is for students to be able to engage in learning experiences inside and outside of the classroom. And then by doing that, we will provide them more opportunities, and it will also connect to career pathways. In Goal 4, which is community and family partnerships, that team is pursuing partnering with local organizations that would be able to offer our students community service opportunities. And that work will be framed, those opportunities will be framed also within career pathways that would align to. So I already talked to you about the Every Student Succeeds Act. This was the guidance given by ISB in 1990, recognizing that schools that volunteer community service is something of value, and credit could be given for that under certain parameters. So I want to really spend a little bit of, not a lot of time, but really go over what we did with our stakeholders. And when I say stakeholders, parents, students, teachers, school counselors, administrators, community members, school board member, and maybe even members of the corporate community. Can't remember that one for sure. So we had a wide range of folks participate in this meeting that took place May 29th at the ADDAMS Center. And what we did is we had a guided discussion, and we collected input from all of the stakeholders at that time about community service hours for our Valley View school students. So there were some themes that became apparent and came out in the feedback that was given to us by those stakeholders that were there at the meeting. Number one, they absolutely believed that community service was a valuable experience for our students, and that it was a way not only for them to give back, but to learn important skills, skills that they would need throughout life. They felt that it is important that whenever possible, there's a connection between the community service and classroom learning. And that time, when they talked about, well, how much time are students going to have for community service, that was one of the areas of challenge. And they said that because we have different students that have different circumstances, some work, some take care of siblings, et cetera, they might not have as much of an opportunity as others. So they felt that wherever possible, we really need to embed these during the school day, these opportunities. So they agreed that when students can choose, then community service is perceived as valuable, but they wanted to be able to have that student's voice be part of the process. And that students that really excel at community service, who put in those really extraordinary efforts, that there should be formal recognition upon graduation for those students. They talked about, we explained to them about ESSA and students receiving that college and career readiness indicator for the community service hours. And this is during the junior and senior year, and they talked about other options besides community service that we need to make that clear as well. There's, job experiences, working during the summer, so that there is, that students are aware of all of the ways that that indicator can be met, but really focusing to let them know that community service is a great way to do that. So when we then talked about making community service a graduation requirement, some of those same concerns that were expressed about having time came up during this as well, because of the concerns about equity. Then, well, how are you going to keep the records? Who's going to be responsible? We had teachers in the room, we had school counselors in the room, et cetera. Who's going to keep these records? How will parents be involved with that? collecting this student community service hours and making sure that they're going to be on track for graduation. And then they said, we have so many students. When you take both of our high schools, will there be enough community service opportunities available for all students to be able to fulfill this requirement? These were some of the things that they felt were a concern. So while community service was seen as important and valuable, there were some important factors that they felt needed more investigation. They didn't feel that just that meeting was sufficient to be able to come to a conclusion, and so they felt that we needed more investigation and discussion by our various stakeholders. I do want to share what other school districts are doing as far as community service. There are 3 schools that have no community service requirement, 3 school districts in our area: Downers Grove, Plainfield, and 204, Naperville 204, Indian Prairie. Then there are schools that have, if students receive a certain number of community service hours, usually greater than 100, students are recognized at graduation with an honor cord. Those schools are East Aurora, Naperville District 203, and Oswego School District 308. And you can see there the different corresponding hours that each school district has. And then there are the schools that say, no, community service is required for graduation. And that's Joliet Township, where they have 40 service hours being a requirement for graduation, and Lincoln Way, that has 20 hours to be a requirement for graduation. So I wanted you to be aware of what surrounding school districts are doing. So our recommendations, based upon the feedback from the stakeholders, is that in lieu of a formal graduation requirement, that we need to encourage community service for all of our students because of the benefits that they can receive from it and our overall community. Those students that engage in community service at a higher level should be recognized. And then the second recommendation is that we have school and district teams that would include students, parents, community stakeholders that would work collaboratively to plan how we would embed community service learning and opportunities into existing courses that we have at the high school level, looking at awarding that honors cord, that recognition at graduation for our students, and then how we also not only wait until senior year to recognize them with an honors cord, but how do we look at starting at 9th grade, recognizing those students who are on track to be able to receive that recognition senior year. And then to look at continuing existing partnerships that we have, and then to look for new partnerships with local organizations that would be able to offer community service opportunities for our students, and then also coordinating and communicating these opportunities to our students and parents. They felt, I think I went, yes. So monitoring the community service hours as an indicator of college and career readiness. Of course, they felt that we should do that. That indicator for ESSA is for junior and senior year only. I just want to state that again for those 25 community service hours. So what they wanted to do, since we want to start 9th grade with having students record what their hours are, and even for junior and senior year, is we need to look at an electronic a way to use technology to verify these hours. That was a very big discussion topic. And again, forming a subcommittee within Strategy 1 that would meet periodically to review those steps and provide an update to the board by the end of the school year, that being enough time for that, for the subcommittees comprised of the various stakeholders to flesh through these different topics and come forward with a formal recommendation. questions and discussion.
The program that we purchased earlier in the year where the students keep track of their grades and the courses they've taken and all that, couldn't that be put into this? Couldn't this be put into that program?
Are you speaking of Naviance?
Yes, I am.
So,
Thank you for knowing the name.
no problem. So there is a company called X2, the number 2 Vol, that partners with Naviance to embed the tracking of community service hours and for it to be done electronically. Now, there are 2 things that we're looking at. Number 1, recording hours, and 2, if we need to approve hours. And so X2 Vol has, when the student submits the hours, they submit the email address of the person that was supervising them, and therefore the verification of those hours is electronic. Within Naviance itself, without X2 Vol, we can set up tracking, but it's the honor system of students putting in what their community service hours are. Does that answer your question? Okay.
So how does Joliet Township and Lincoln Way track their hours?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
How does Joliet Township and Lincoln Way track their hours?
I don't know how Lincoln Way does it. Joliet Township and East Aurora used to also require community service hours. It usually falls on school counselors to track those hours. When East Aurora, I have actually looked at this topic for a number of years. And some years back, when I first did my research and East Aurora had it as a graduation requirement, I actually talked to some of the school counselors and said, how does this work? And they were very honest with me and said, it's a problem tracking this and verifying. And for some students, when we get up to graduation, and this is what's standing in the way of a student graduating, different counselors handled it in a different way. But they all felt very pained about that being in the way of students graduating. And so that is probably one of the things that they looked at when they changed to now having an honor cord versus a graduation requirement.
So what's the difference between, how are NHS students who have to have community service for NHS requirements, how are they going to be differentiated from students that aren't in NHS?
So NHS students do have a community service requirement, and that is tracked through NHS. What we're talking about with this being a graduation requirement, this would be up to the decision of the board and what the committee would recommend, but very well that those hours that NHS students do could fold into the requirement or looking at the honor, but that would be a decision of how that is handled. And they're not the only ones either. NHS is not the only club.
Right, but NHS students wear honor cords at graduation. And in order to wear those honor cords, one of the requirements is you have to have fulfilled your community service hours.
Correct.
So if I'm in NHS and I have my honor cords on and Sally's not in NHS and she has honor cords on, where's their distinguished?
Okay, sorry, I misunderstood your question. I'm sure they would be different colors. So that the way that the honors cords work is different honors have different colors associated with them. So the one for NHS would have theirs, and then the ones for community service would have a different one.
So then, since NHS would ideally, would they be wearing 2 sets of cords?
If they fulfilled both. I don't think that the number of hours that the NHS students complete, well, it depends on what the designation is, but I don't know that it's the same amount that would be required if you were looking at having it be an honor for graduation. NHS, as a former NHS person many decades ago, you get in that club, so to speak, because of your academic performance. And then to stay in the club, you do community service. So that honor cord for NHS is not just about community service, it's also about how you've performed academically. So it's different. Did I answer your question? Okay.
So ours is going to be a graduation requirement we're working towards when we have this communication with our committees that we're coming up with later. That's our goal, correct?
We do not have a goal. We're just providing information to the board for the board to discuss what they want to be put in place here at Valley View. Am I correct, Assistant Superintendent Kender?
Yeah, so Dorletta has summarized what the recommendations from the committee were in terms of kind of pros and cons, and then what would be a way to take a more conservative approach for this school year to essentially start to explore some of these topics that were brought up as concerns, from logistical tracking to equity, to opportunity for what about students that this presented a hardship for because they rely on paid employment. Would we then, make them work for unpaid hours and cause a hardship for them or their families? So a lot of issues were raised that would need to be discussed. So we're not recommending that we put a requirement in place at this time. What we're recommending is that we strongly encourage it. We recognize it in a way that can be complementary to other ways that students are recognized. You'll often see them with their collection of cords that represent different things, in a way that gets students, maybe interested to even just try out and go work towards that. And then at the same time, take voice from a variety of our stakeholders that could then lead us to say, is it enough that we continue with just the strong recommendation and looking to build in service learning opportunities in courses? Or do we want to work toward a formal requirement if that's the will of the board and the voice from the committees that will be giving you feedback on how it's going? So what are students saying in terms of what are the benefits and the opportunities? And they recommend it for all, and they think it should be in place. Or the challenges were so great, they'd like to do it, but they'd like to make a lesser number. There may be a variety of different voice components that come out. So our recommendation is that we encourage it, that we form committees that discuss and see how things are going throughout the year, and then at the end of the year, they essentially would say, this is how it's gone, and this is what our feeling is, what would be a good recommendation, and then the board would ultimately make that decision if they feel that, one way or another is the right way to go, or we leave it as is.
So do you have an anticipation of promoting this as voluntary on the front end? This is a speculation, but, and then maybe perhaps moving towards something that might be required?
Yeah, that's
yeah.
the idea now, especially the fact that it's, we're weeks away from the start of the school
Sure.
year. And then we would need to talk about, what would that look like prorated? Would this be, if we did anything but strongly encourage, would we put a requirement immediately in place for our current year seniors at some prorated numbers? I mean, it would become very messy on a short notice, and I don't think that would be our goal. We want this to be a positive experience for our students. We want this to be a positive contribution for our community. So we certainly don't want to make this an unpleasant experience for anyone involved. We'd like to take a more measured approach and listen to our students, listen to our parents, listen to our community, and say, how can we best be of service to one another? How can we best work in partnership and give our students that experience that they could really learn and grow from?
As anybody up here who knows me knows that I'm a big proponent of community activity and involvement, and I think everybody up on this board, including volunteering their time to be on this board, understands the value of this. And anybody who's heard me speak at a graduation, I ask all the graduates, whether you do it in your town, this town, wherever, please give back to the community that you find yourself in, whether you're after college or 50 years old, whatever you might be. Get involved in your community because it gives you ownership in the community and also gives you a sense of satisfaction. I completely agree, and in corporate America, it's a huge thing for employees to give back to the community, or some charity that they figure out that they want to be involved in. It's a huge thing. So wherever this goes, and whatever the final recommendations are, I'm fully behind it. I just want to make sure, as in Dorletta, you guys have vetted some of this. What is fair and what is equitable, and to each to their ability, I think is where you're probably going to land. But by promoting it and providing opportunity, and if we're going to credit it with a honor cord or whatever it may be, recognition of some sort, to make sure that that's done properly. And then there's confirmation. It's not just some kid trying to pad their resume, as it were, but there's actually some involvement in it. And so I appreciate the efforts on the parts of everybody involved. So, and Liz, I want to thank you for bringing that up again. So, anybody else have anything?
I'm always a little confused on process and procedures, so I always like to be clarified, get clear and get clarification. So this is an informational meeting today, and I know the school year is starting soon, and that's what Steve was referring to and what Rachel was referring to. So I guess I'm going to either ask the other board members or ask Mr. O'Driscoll or ask the people that presented this what they're looking for from the board tonight. What is the board looking for tonight? Are we looking for something tonight, or do we need to make a decision in the next board? Where is this going?
Well, right now it's an informational. I think with the committee that's active, if you have input or 2 cents worth, to make sure that you convey that message to the committee, and then you guys are going to come back to us at some point and make more of a formal recommendation?
So this is a little bit unique for me as well. Typically, since this was at the request of the board, I don't know that we're in the position to necessarily give a strong recommendation, or are we just hearing what the will of the board is, so to speak? Right. So we certainly can work with some variation of the recommendation that's been presented that the board would agree upon. So if you would like to give me feedback, separately or after, between now and the next board meeting, then we can structure that recommendation accordingly. Otherwise, we would just proceed as normal. And in a formal sense, I don't know that this technically requires board action. Right. But since it is an important topic and an important idea that has been brought up by the board, I do think it would be fitting that the board gives us direction on how to proceed.
I guess if you were to implement something that would be active, how much time would you need to put something together?
I guess it depends to what degree we are implementing. If we are
like a tracking system,
that would take time. So that's why we're recommending that we would explore that idea during the 1920 school year. So essentially, the recommendation is to encourage but continue to explore those things, because we would not have that in place by August.
Right, obviously.
Yeah.
What about preparing opportunities, presenting opportunities? Making those available, not to us, but to students.
Same thing, because that would require a lot of coordination, and it also it brings up a lot of questions as well. So right now we vet volunteers who come into our schools, but how well and to what extent are we able to have the manpower to vet agencies, for example, where students would go out and be with them, or is that not an expectation? So there's like a lot of questions when you kind of start to peel the layers of the onion, because if we are endorsing like, hey, go do community service with X, Y, and Z, are we essentially saying that that's a place that we feel confident and comfortable is, a place for our students to go? So
April of 2020 would be an opportunity you could have things in place, or March of 2020. Just throw out a number.
That was what was presented. It was by the conclusion of the 1920 school year. We would come back to the board, give feedback on how things went, what were the challenges, what is the voice from the stakeholders, and then we would address those challenges. And if the board felt strongly in one particular direction, then that's the direction we would go. And then if there were related concerns or areas that needed to be explored, we would explore those further.
I think if we're going to do something for the next year, and you're going to try and prorate for, graduates coming in, if we had something in place as a board before the adjournment of school, so then the seniors going out in the summer would have at least some kind of goals and objectives that they could reach to. But we can't just dump it on May 15th. I think sometime in April or something, if we had some kind of number that
Absolutely.
says, so just so you guys know, here's your opportunity, and we're going to try and make this, it's either going to be voluntary or voluntold, as they say. We're going to try and get this moving forward, and it gives them something to work to, and they'll give them the entire summer, A, to find something that they might be interested in, or B, to involve themselves and get credit for it.
You're talking about incoming seniors?
People who would be a senior going into 2021.
Okay, because I think, I don't want to speak for Liz, but myself, and I think maybe Liz, we're thinking not just for seniors, we're thinking for all high school kids, and so that you could work towards it all 4 years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
you
I'm just
have
saying,
it by your senior
seniors,
year.
so those kids in particular, if we're gonna prorate it, would have an opportunity to get their 15, 20 hours in that summer. Everybody else would. of
So if you're an
course, have-
incoming freshman.
Freshmen would have to do a different number
Yeah.
because they're freshmen. They would have.
So if it was 80 hours.
Let's use a number. If we make it 20 hours a year, freshmen have to have the 80. Sophomores would have 60, juniors 40. so on
Perfect,
and
that's
so
exactly what, I think
Okay.
the people were thinking about.
Just throw a
in the
number out.
communi-
I'm-
In the
yeah, I'm
committee.
forth. Big picture. Okay. Thank you.
So, I guess my question is to Rachel right now. So if we wait, like Steve is suggesting, which is probably best for all,
Cut it out.
what was your vision for getting them used to it this year? It sounds like you had a vision for maybe doing some encouragement this year.
Right, and that's where I would rely on the school teams to do that, because I don't feel that like us sitting in this room tonight could have the full picture of how they would view it, from a student perspective, a counselor perspective, a administrator, teacher perspective, and a parent perspective, as well as community members. So I would want them to then take this kind of directive of the board that we want to encourage and move forward, and that we want them to start to promote it, and then have these conversations related to the points that were outlined on the previous 2 slides, and that the expectation was that they begin to promote, encourage, and bring information back to us so that we could present it to the board in the spring.
So, I guess I'm assuming, and everybody can chime in on this or not, so probably for this school year, there would not be an expectation or requirement for any hours, but just an encouragement voluntarily, and then when we get everything together, then we can decide what works best, correct?
Right, and just so as you saw the variation that went across the districts, we could decide that it is 100 hours, 150 hours, or 40, or 0. I mean, there could be any variation, but I think it would be really important to listen to the voice that would come back from the groups at each of the buildings, and then make that decision how the board feels is best for Valley View as a whole. And we would have more time to have considered all of the variables that were raised by our initial conversations with stakeholders, and then we could address those accordingly and decide how we would move forward.
I have a comment. I had 3 children in college, 2 out of state, 1 in state. They all played sports. They all do community. It's about the team that they're with. And they all have this bond when they're coming from complete strangers, and by October, they have a niche. They find something with that. So if we start with the teams, if you're looking at the ball teams or something like that, I don't know where to start, but start it slowly and see how it goes to get you an idea. Let the team start it. If it's going to be the football team, if it's going to be the basketball team. They're bonded already because they're together. Maybe they do something. I don't know the answer. You guys are all the educators, but that's what I seen, and it's just not here. It's just in this. One's in Illinois, and the other 2 are out of state. All 3 states, they do that at a college level.
My only concern with that, and I appreciate that, and I thank you guys for taking the opportunity even to discuss this, but what about those students who are not bonded with anybody? As Sally said, my whole think about this, and like I said, it wasn't me, it was just something that was presented at a National School Board Conference some years ago. But I like the idea if the administrators, the relationships that the teachers and the deans and the counselors and principal have with the students, but I just don't want us to truly leave anybody out. My other thing we talked about, AP classes and AP student, and I thank you guys for all sharing all what have happened with your children. I have too many children, adopted children, to tell you all the stories of how the life skills and things that we've done in my family, so I won't share that, but I am truly, truly concerned that no child is left behind who does not have that child that is being bullied, that child who has any issues, that child that don't come, from the AP classes, that child that comes from the same, that child that has to work 3 jobs to help mom and dad. My goal, my desire, that truly no child will left behind. So when I was hearing all the conversation that was going on, I heard Assistant Superintendent say, that we're gonna put that out there to them so that all those challenges and concern, and as it is said about testing and other things, we're not trying to do this, or my goal was not trying to do this so that there will be any more burden on an administrator, a student, a family, or the community, because we're gonna need everybody, We sit here and we talk a good game, but are we really concerned about everybody? They talked about the diversity, so that diversity don't have to be, it cannot be on the same team, so that we will find out about diversity. So I just want us to keep in mind if that those people out there who are in the trenches, who are actually doing what we are seeking for them to do, to come back and tell them, as she said, will it be 20 hours? Will it be 5 hours? Will it be no hours at all? I just am glad that we had this conversation to come to the table. And as President Quigley said, we all realize and sit here that, realize that community service, that it does work. Because I don't want to tell you about all my story. I've been working since I was 10 years old. I started Sears Tower when I was 16 years old, but I still had time for that community with the single mom. So all those things, we're not trying to burden anybody, but we know that the giving back, like you say, the psychologist told, those, if I've got family members, I have to adopt their kids because they got bipolar and stuff, but those, when they even give back and give something, I see how those family members are better off for themselves. So that's what I'm not trying to burden anybody, but if she go and said in 2019 to 20, President Quigley said by April to give them, so that we don't want to burden, we don't want to throw a monkey wrench out there for those who are coming up seniors. I have a granddaughter coming up senior, so I'm not trying to do it, not personally to satisfy her, but that we will have these things out there so they can see the benefit. Like you say, if we can get those students who are volunteering, they want to do it, they want to reach out, and I'm an opponent of the students' voices. We'll look forward to our liaisons coming with us pretty soon, and that those voices, so they can really tell us the things that we probably have not considered and how that burden would be on them individually. So that's just what my concern is, that we do not leave anybody out and allow them to go forth from August till March and come back in April. I think that's a great idea.
Thank you.
I concur with all I've said, in my humble opinion. If community service is looked at as anything other than an opportunity for kids, it's going to be burdensome. If the board's will is to force kids into community service as a graduation requirement, then it starts to look like something other than another opportunity that Valley View offers to children as a means of enhancing their educational experience. And especially in a community such as ours that is so diverse, socially, economically, as well as culturally. the burden of forcing kids into community service, I think, would be a significant challenge.
Thank you.
So
Moving down
may
the-
I, I'm sorry, may I, just for a point of clarification then, are we okay to proceed with this course of action outlined as a recommendation? Does this require formal board action? Or are we just moving forward from here and we will provide an update to the board? Just so I'm
think-
clear.
I think we just want an update. We're- yeah, I
Okay,
mean,
thank
and-
you.
And keep the committee together and, keep forging
Got it.
ahead.
Yes, sir.
And at some point, if you feel comfortable, with a recommendation, or if you move to that point,
Yep.
what you think as Jim said, the bigger picture, where you might land, so be it.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving down the agenda, lease renewal modular unit at Independence Elementary School.
I'm sorry, there's
I'm
one
sorry,
other
instructional
information
material.
report,
Oh,
yes,
sorry.
and this one will be short. Sorry, my computer fell asleep during that last information report. Okay, so the next information report is 13.3, and that is instructional materials. This, okay.
You want me to read it?
No, that's okay. Okay, it's information report 13.3, instructional materials list. I referenced this earlier. This is the instructional, core instructional materials that are listed by level and by course or grade level where appropriate. This is brought forth in accordance with Board Policy 6210, instructional materials. The list is a link that's been linked into this report. It's also available via our website in multiple places under curriculum, under the educational services links, and under the respective curriculum sites as well. And we update this periodically to list out the core resources that are used per course. Now, I did mention earlier that there are many supplementary resources that our educators use in the courses, from magazine articles, primary and secondary sources in a social studies classroom, subscription services that the district provides. These are just the core materials. So you will see that some textbooks are older, significantly older, maybe 10 years old, but that may be appropriate for that course because it's just used as a kind of core resource for the course, and they are supplementing. And so it's not necessary to do a full-blown textbook adoption. That used to be the case, where we would periodically, do $100,000 textbook adoption repeatedly, every few years per course, and that's different now in education, especially with our one-to-one devices and such. So our kids may be using their device and use their core resource as well as some supplementary. And so what you see here is our required instructional materials posting. It's available online. Anyone who would like is able to inspect these materials. If a parent had a question, we would most certainly be happy to answer any questions, as is the same for a board member. So this is just being brought forth to you this evening.
Thank you.
When I was at home, I tried to go to the link to see the materials, but I don't see it. And then
Yeah, just click anywhere.
one of these, or?
No, yeah, just click one of these down here. There you go. And then each one will tell you.
Okay, she helped.
She helped.
I didn't see there, down at the bottom, there's in the scroll part at the very bottom, in the line, for each of the courses, you can click on that. So when I first looked, it said, welcome to Valley View School District, listing of instructional materials. Click on a tab below to see. So I was looking in the regular screen to see if I could find where the materials were, but it's actually in a very small tab down below. So maybe this could be a little more user-friendly, maybe. Just if we could do that, because I was kind of lost, and I've done a lot of stuff in the schools, and I can't imagine a parent trying to do the same thing, you know what I mean? Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Gary, is that you?
It is. Excuse me. It's been 3 years since we put the modulars at Independence Elementary. They continue to express a need for the usage of those modulars. They currently house four fifth grade classrooms, one being bilingual, three being general ed. We did a square foot comparison to Jonas Salk, which is kind of the identical sister school of Independence, looking at the number of students at each school. And without the modulars, it would be a deficiency in terms of square footage at Independence. With the modulars, it provides a very comparable situation. We could continue the lease. We looked at this from two perspectives. One would be continuing the lease at a $3,500 per month cost. The other would be to purchase it outright at a cost of $255,000. So it's about a 72-month break-even point. In talking to the representative at Innovative Modular, he said if it was me, I certainly would suggest buying it. It's a very well-made modular unit. It's not just a mobile home, as people like to refer to it. It's built to international building codes. You guys, meaning us, Valley View, certainly maintain it. You've made it look like it's always been there. If you've had the opportunity to either see it from the exterior or inside, they're very, very nice units. And so anyway, it does give us some options going into the future. Certainly if Independence did not have a need for them, they could be relocated to any other campus within the school district. The one caveat to all of it, the village at the time when we petitioned to put the mobiles in, provided us a 3-year break, if you will, from what's known as a fee in lieu of stormwater detention. Since that campus is so landlocked, there was really no place to put stormwater detention. And so they provided us with a calculation that we would pay, if you will, in lieu of the stormwater, $19,000. They said that if you decide to keep those modulars longer than the 3 years, then that would be due and owed. And so at this time, or not at this time, but we'd like to bring back a recommendation for the purchase. We think it's a prudent course of action in terms of keeping it in the district for use by both Independence and any other building that might need it in the future. And if there was no need, certainly we could sell them on the open market for whatever that cost might bring us.
So
Questions?
if we were to move those units to another building, would we have to pay this fee to the village and fee in lieu of detention?
Right now,
Because you're covering up additional,
What?
you would still have that fee hanging out there. You wouldn't have to
No,
pay
no,
it
no. We're gonna-
necessarily
so if
at Independence, but you would still have the idea of you're covering up green space that's not absorbing water. That's what the storm retention is,
Right.
the purpose of it is.
Right.
So you're paying for theoretically 40 years worth of sewer
Okay.
and water for
So
that spot.
we're going to pay for it at Independence right now, and if we move it to Humphrey, we'd have to pay for it there as well.
Potentially, we'd have to see
Yeah.
where it would land, what kind of detention we have. Could we potentially dig a detention pond deeper to accommodate the
Right,
stormwater
you have
detention
various
requirements?
options,
If it went to Romeoville, what does their ordinance call for? But I think you're on the right track, and I'm following where you are. So yes, we would potentially have to pay for it
But
again.
it is
As long
a-
as it remains at Independence, we would not.
Yeah, it's a one-time shot if it stays at Independence, yes.
What is the life of them, the modulars?
Honestly, I think indefinite really is, with any other structure, maintenance is important. And we would treat it like we would any other building in terms of making sure that it's watertight, it's maintained. And so, it's got plumbing, it's got 3 restrooms, it's got a staff restroom and then a boys and a girls restroom in there. And so, obviously we're going to maintain it in operating order, just like any other building.
Okay, then I have one more question. So, like Diane said, if we do own them and we decide to move them, I know when we had them installed, I saw the price of the installation. Do we have the capabilities within the district, if we decide to move them without all of those fees, or do we have to hire them again and charge the amount of fees to install and to move?
Yeah, good question. I think there would certainly be some cost associated with providing plumbing, electric service, and everything else. Just real quickly on a breakdown, when you think about what we've spent thus far and then what we would spend with the purchase, including the stormwater or fee in lieu of, you know, the total investment's about $690,000. And for, 5,000 square feet, that's pretty darn good price. You'd be hard pressed to duplicate that with any sort of masonry structure with footings and so forth. But in answer to your question specifically, yes, I think we would have to incur some cost. Would we have the ability to do it? It really depends on the time of year, where it was going, where we were siting it on whatever campus it would go to in terms of what those costs would be.
Because we're leasing them now, who pays for any damage? Does the leasing company or do we? If something happens inside or the roof leaks, or who's paying for it now versus if we now buy it, then we pay for everything?
Yeah, the unit came with a 1-year warranty. It's a 2013. It was built in 2013, so it was used when we purchased it. But just like you would with a leased car, any damage incurred, we would have to
We
pay
would
for
pay
that.
for it no matter
That's
what.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Falls under our policies, insurance-wise, and all that kind of stuff. So it's ours for all practical purposes. It's just, we don't own it, so we're just paying rent, even though it's ours. So, any other questions on that? Thank you, Gary. Legal Services report.
No report.
AFT report. No report. Valley View Council report. No report. Valley View Personnel Council, Office Personnel Council report. Any old business before the board this evening? Any new business before the board this evening? Any questions on the public on actions we have taken this evening? Here.
Just one on the textbooks. The psychology textbook that's being adopted, is that strictly hard copy, or does that come with ebook digital resource for the Chromebooks?
It comes with both. It is the print and the digital access as well.
Thank you. Any announcements by the board?
I do. I just want to thank the members